What is up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite, your trio of choice, the Hashira Half Hour. I am joined today by my best buddy, Lars. I love the little aliens from Toy Story. So I am at my current place of employment. And so I needed a buddy with me today. So here he is. Pass it to Hannah.
What's up, guys? I feel like I am a new person because in case you're not watching this video, I have a new microphone and it is the best quality microphone I've ever owned in my life. So I'm feeling a very good feeling right now.
We're feeling it for you, Hannah. What's up, guys? This is Emily. Excited to be here this week. Really looking forward to the weekend. I don't know about any of you, but a lot happened this week for me. I'm tired. I'm ready for a nap. So excited to talk about Demon Slayer and excited to enjoy the weekend afterwards too.
I agree.
Honestly, I think we're all getting the Nezuko vibes of sleep for 2 years, then wake up and do some stuff. Are we right? All right, so we are hopping into episode 11, the Tsuzumi Mansion. First off, I love this episode, especially because we drop right before the action starts, right? We see a lot of stuff go down, but I want to talk about one moment in particular, and I think it really speaks to Tanjiro again. Here I am. This is my soapbox now, and now I get to talk about how much I love Tanjiro. So, Hannah, you can step back. But we first see one of our characters, or I actually don't even think we know his name, but the guy who literally flies outside the house and is like, I made it outside. Am I going to live? How did that make you feel? Like, I feel like that's a moment that people don't talk about enough in Demon Slayer. It's so, like, small, but let's talk about it for a second.
I mean, it doesn't bode very well for whatever's going to happen inside of the mansion, right? It's like, there's this uncertainty at first because Tanjiro is just kind of taking it all in and Zenitsu as well. Not taking it in as well as Tanjiro, but, they stumble upon these kids that are kind of like cowering in the forest. They've disclosed to him that their brother is somewhere in that house. And then like moments after they share that information, a guy that is probably about their brother's age comes flying out of the window and is not doing so good. So, I think what's going through Tanjiro's mind at that moment is like, is this your brother? I really hope this isn't your brother. And if it's not, how many people are in there? What's going on in this house? Something strange is afoot. So those are just my initial impressions.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably one of the more gory moments that we've seen outside of like Susumaru in the last arc, just kind of being destroyed by Muzan's curse. But just like Tanjiro's reaction was very interesting in my opinion, because you could tell he so regretted not getting there sooner. And, he's thinking about the fact that him and Zenitsu were just kind of hanging out on the road and, wishing that he got there sooner. I also kind of feel like that line where he says, if only I'd gone here sooner, was kind of a callback to Gyu in the first episode. I instantly thought of that moment, and I kind of have to wonder if Tanjiro is thinking of that moment that, actually that might have been Gyu's thoughts if I'm remembering correctly, but still kind of shows that they're kind of connected. And really sets the tone for what this arc is going to be. I think it's coming up on being one of the more dramatic ones of the season. So a lot of exciting things that are about to happen.
Definitely. And one thing I want to just kind of like surmise in this is like Tanjiro, of course, is our like empathetic boy. He understands everyone's pain, and he walks in literally to see somebody yeeted out of a window and is already holding them to their death. Like, I think that's something that only Tanjiro could have done out of our characters we know so far, and only has the heart to do because he has all of that trauma behind him. So I really think that's an interesting way that we get to see this episode kind of play out. Now, I want to talk about Tanjiro leaving Nezuko outside. We've seen a lot of their relationship be very close. And even in the previous episodes, we saw their commitment to each other. How does this moment in which Tanjiro decides to leave her outside kind of differ from the way he's tried to keep her close and protect her?
Man, it was interesting. That was actually a moment that I kind of wrote down too, because it was very different from what he usually does. And I think it just comes from his heart of wanting to protect everyone, because he let her stay there in case those kids needed protection. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to bring Nezuko into this fight because I think it's too scary, so you two kids protect her. It was if anything happens, like, the person that's inside of this box will help you. So I think it kind of is showing Tanjiro's growth and knowing that Nezuko is powerful and he doesn't have to just necessarily always protect her, that maybe she can fend for herself. But also now he's thinking ahead and thinking, hey, she might be able to protect other people as well. And I think that's really important for his character arc.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot in this episode that is kind of unexpected. I think that's kind of a fun theme that runs throughout it. And I would agree with Hannah. Tanjiro, I think, for one of the first times, is empowering her to take charge on something a little bit more that carries a lot of immediate weight. So we know that it ends up not really working out, and that the children end up coming into the mansion anyway, even though he's left Nezuko out there to guard them. And I think in a way he was kind of hoping that they would keep an eye on her as well and make sure that the box would stay safe, because it is still broad daylight outside too, which is something that we have to keep in mind. Like, how much would she be able to do? Not 100% sure, because as it stands right now, she's not able to obviously stand in the sunlight as a demon. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully we'll cut back to Nezuko pretty soon.
I was thinking about that too. I was just like, maybe Tanjiro in his like moment of trying to grow and be like, all right, she can protect other people and I can go fight by myself. He literally forgot that she can't do anything in the sun because it is broad daylight. But Tundra is also used to fighting demons in the dark. Like, this is a kind of a new feeling of they're going inside a building where there's no sunlight, so they can fight these demons in the middle of the day. It's very new to them as well.
Tundra must have been excited. He finally got like a day shift. He got like a normal time. He got home at like 5 for dinner.
When do demon slayers sleep? Someone please tell me. It's not during the day because they're traveling to their next mission during the day.
We still haven't figured that out yet. If you have an answer or if you have a theory, drop it in the comments, DM us about it. Going forward though, right? We also see at kind of a weird pace Zenitsu's ability to grow. And again, I think this is the first time that we see Tanjiro kind of change someone else on his team's mind, or maybe just like influence someone directly. It's when he passes that rice ball to Zenitsu and Zenitsu shares back. I think this just kind of speaks to his overall capacity of emotion, but I think it also kind of starts to show how Tanjiro is a leader in his own sense. How do you guys think this formation of his kind of new friend and kind of what they're embarking on is going to tell, or is going to show what his leadership will look like down the road?
Well, he stepped into the leader role pretty naturally. I mean, the moment with the food is really sweet, but even just like allowing this guy to tag along with him in the first place just kind of shows his compassionate nature, I think. Because let's be honest, Zenitsu's kind of a mess right now.
Me.
Kind of.
Relatable. But he is, from the moment that we see him in a constant state of panic, not an ideal fighting partner in these kind of delicate circumstances when it comes to fighting the demons, where a brief moment or like one very quick motion may make the difference between life and death. This might not be your first choice of a companion that you would bring along. And yet Tanjiro does bring him along anyway. Or maybe he doesn't bring him along, but he's okay with him tagging along in his shadow as they approach the mansion. So I'll be interested to see what kind of partnership, if any, they're able to have as we kind of go through this battle in the mansion. But I think it just goes to show that Tanjiro is able to welcome a motley crew and rein them in, I think, a little bit, if not much yet.
I mean, we see that meme face from Tanjiro. He clearly is like not impressed by Zenitsu when he first meets him. But he still is like super willing to just have him come along, and you called out to that moment with the food, which I found really interesting. I'll always talk about my boy. I'm just gonna preface with that, but I love how Tanjiro like offers him the food, and then Zenitsu's like, "Oh, are you gonna eat too?" And Tanjiro's like, "No, that's all I have," and he's perfectly content just giving Zenitsu his food. And then when Zenitsu's like, "Okay, you can have half," Tanjiro acts like it's like the most wonderful thing that Zenitsu could do for him. He's just so like, oh, really? Like you're sharing with me, even though this is food that I shared with you. It just like really goes to show his empathy and his kindness because, like I said, I think he wasn't impressed with Zenitsu when he first met him, but he's willing to just kind of say, all right, like come along with me. Let's do this. Let's make it happen. And because of the way he acted when they entered the mansion, Zenitsu was like, all right, fine, I'll go. And it got Zenitsu moving because otherwise he would have stayed out there. Honestly, I can relate.
As a Zenitsu stan, self-proclaimed, I will say this, that when the first time I started watching Demon Slayer, I thought he was very annoying. Until we see what he does later, which we won't talk about right now. But I do think it's very interesting. And I think that it creates kind of a really good contrast of who these people are and their different backgrounds. And so with kind of Zenitsu being there and now kind of starting to join a team, we do see another face that comes in and they're wearing a boar hide and they aren't the most put together either. And very last line of the episode is Lord Inosuke is coming through. How do you guys feel about this come through?
What a wild guy. When he was first introduced, I genuinely thought he was like a demon pretending to be like someone with swords for a while before I realized that he was actually trying to slay the demon. I'll be honest with y'all. I adore Inosuke, and it kind of goes along with Zenitsu. Like I love both of them. Their character development to come is really crazy, but I feel like Inosuke's introduction is almost more wild than Zenitsu. Like Zenitsu was crazy and just like crying and being a womanizer, kind of like Zenitsu, but Inosuke is just like literally this person with a boar head, and he's just running through. What a wild welcome to a character, because we haven't seen him at all, because we didn't see him at final selection either. We have no idea who this guy is.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I shared the same opinion the first time that I watched it. I thought that he was a demon too. And why wouldn't you maybe jump to that conclusion, given that we're in the scary demon house and things are moving around and like this like very strange costume design that they've got. It's like, what is going on with this guy? But then I think the swords were my first clue in that we were probably looking at another demon slayer that we hadn't seen quite yet, although his sword and his fighting style is very different than anybody else that we've seen so far too. Mm-hmm. So looking forward to more of our wild boy. I love him too, near and dear to my heart. And what an entrance.
Yeah, I think the best I think the best kind of comparison here is he's a Red Bull in a China shop. He really just goes for it, and he quite literally does crash through every wall, tearing everything down. Honestly, I feel like I am a blend of Inosuke and Zenitsu. If you've seen me walk in person, I feel like I trip over things and or just knock things over as well. So honestly, relatable feelings here. With, of course, my favorite section of everything, right? Villains and demons. Let's talk about it. This demon's blood art is really cool. And I think contextually in the way a fight is set up, when you constantly have a changing location like that, where we see him hit the drum and the room moves, or the room just transports itself to a different section of the house, you definitely get a very eerie feeling because you don't know where you are anymore and you don't have a pattern. What are your guys' thoughts about how Tanjiro and our new friends will take on this demon?
It's going to require a lot of quick thinking and quick movements because we're kind of dealing with like a House of Escher, right? It's like the constant like falling forward, backwards, in and out, like all over the place. It's going to require some quick footwork, which I do think that he mastered a little bit more in this previous fight that we had with the twin demons. Obviously, he's also still injured, which he's already made note of. He's like, I can't protect you, Zenitsu. I still have like multiple broken ribs and like my leg is messed up. So he's already at a disadvantage in this fight, I think. given that he hasn't fully recovered. And on top of that, it is going to be very difficult to navigate. It's going to require him, I think, to use probably his keen sense of smell to help battle the demon a little bit, and just those quick movements, because that's what he has, I think, that could stand a chance as a different sense.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we didn't get to see a ton of what the demon is capable of in this episode. It kind of was an introduction to him, but I think this episode they did a really good job at having a lot of comedy and a lot of like creepiness. There was a good mixture of both, and it never felt weird because we had that introduction to Zenitsu, and most of his moments were comedic, but then even just like the soundtrack is lending to this situation being more creepy than any of the ones we've done before. It's not as cut and dry. And yeah, those Suzumi's drums, I should say, because I'm terrible at pronouncing Japanese words. We get a very brief moment with them, but we can tell that this is going to be some intense blood demon art for sure. And it's going to be the hardest. And he's injured. Like, it's already the hardest type of blood demon art we're dealing with. And he's injured. Like, come on. That's gonna be tough.
And just looking at like this blood art that we're looking at, right? We've seen the Tamari now with their own sound design, and now we see the Tsuzumi with, again, another sound design choice. And so I really think that that's kind of what makes Demon Slayer cool. And I don't know why, but I always love how sounds can kind of associate with feels. And so I feel like we've also kind of started to see, right, when Tanjiro uses his own forms, or hopefully when he uses his forms in the next episode's fight scenes, we get some more of that sound design. So you can see when these critical moments are coming, and then they just make when you're finally there, when you see a success, that much more powerful as you move through an episode. Kind of going into Zenitsu's character a little bit, we see him talk with one of the children about how scared he is and how things kind of, he thinks he's literally going to die first on scene. So what do you guys think is going to motivate Zenitsu to move forward in this fight? Like, he does get separated from Tanjiro on one of the beats of the drum, and then he's lost it. What is going to move him forward, or what personally is going to challenge him to step up to the plate here?
Absolutely nothing. He is literally trying to escape. My boy has no motivation to stay and fight whatsoever. Even when what is his name? What is the kid's name? I can't remember. Kazumi or something. He's like telling him, how dare you? Like, aren't you ashamed to be leaning on someone of younger age? Why would you run away? After that happens, and it's just still like, all right, let's get out of here. So I think it's tough. He doesn't have a whole lot of motivation yet, but I think the motivation that he has is going to come in the next episode.
I agree. He's like laying out, like bleeding on the floor. He's like, harsh words, very harsh words from a child. I still don't want to do it.
No motivation. Absolutely none. I can relate.
I do think that we'll probably get to see him. He's going to have to take some kind of action, because ultimately it's going to come down to do or die. And even though he doesn't really want to do anything, I don't think that he wants to die either. So hopefully we'll get to see a little bit more. I do also see him sacrificing the child before himself at this point. So,
oh man. Honestly though, I do think that's what's nice about Demon Slayer, is that we kind of have these nice contrasts. Nonetheless, right, we have this contrast now of, because we've seen Tanjiro as a Demon Slayer, we've seen Giyu as a Demon Slayer, and we've seen Orokodaki. All three of them have been very consistent, very powerful, very straightforward, but also very somewhat kind souls. And now we're starting to get to see these other people who use different types of forms than what we've seen, and also somewhat of their personality in kind of how they differ. How do you think that these different breathing styles kind of correlate to different personalities? Because you have Tanjiro, Orokodaki, and Giyu, who are very strong and compassionate, but now you have Zenitsu, who maybe we don't know his breathing style yet, but what do we think is coming from that?
yeah, we haven't necessarily seen the breathing styles yet of the new Demon Slayers, but I do think it is going to tie into their personalities directly. So I think we can expect something unexpected from Zenitsu, something that maybe is dormant, and who knows what it might unleash when it comes down to it. We've seen Inosuke very briefly, and we know that there's clearly like this kind of animalistic vibe about him as well, between like the boar head that he currently has on and just like the rugged quality of the swords that he's using. So I imagine that it's going to tie into those two. We've only had exposure so far to very few people, but I think we've seen that it does tie into their personality traits and their surroundings too, and the environment that they were trained in.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we know because we watched the show before, but if I had to guess without knowing what his breathing form is, I would say it has to be something loud.
Oh my god, is that a read to me because I'm loud AF?
No, Zenitsu literally spends the entire episode screaming.
To be fair, Inosuke is also pretty loud. So
yes, Bryan is loud. I will say that.
Yeah, people make fun of me a lot because they're like, Bryan, quiet? What?
Never heard of her. No, yeah, Zenitsu, like if I had to guess, like as far as breathing style goes, I would say with breathing somewhat being similar to a character's personality, it would need to be something loud.
All right. Well, I think it's about time for our favorite moments, unless someone else has anything they want to bring up about this episode. All right. Well, obviously my favorite moment is when Zenitsu obviously is on screen, of course, but I actually want to take a point and really redirect it to our drum demon so far. And he gets very irritated. He's like, these people in my house, annoying. More people here, annoying, frustrated. And just like, we can tell that something's building within him. We don't know what it is yet, but he keeps beating the drum and he's like, there's more people here, Jesus. It's like, I invited too many people over right now. But I think it's just very cool because we get to see a very ominous form that I think a lot of demons are very show-offish. And this one seems a little bit more of an opposite. Like he doesn't want really, or at least from what I get, he doesn't want to fight so far. He wants to just kind of like lay back in his mansion, eat some people every once in a while, and then, move on with life.
That's true. My favorite moment, I want to call out actually the soundtrack. I mentioned it in episode 1 about how much I loved the soundtrack, and I feel like I haven't mentioned it a whole lot yet. But we get like Tanjiro's third-ish theme, I guess you could call it, when he first starts fighting, and it actually reoccurs less than a few of the other themes, but it's something that comes into play a lot in a certain season 2 arc where a certain person is bleeding. And it's a part of the soundtrack that I just listen to over and over again. So I have to kind of call out that as my favorite because soundtrack is very important to a TV show and movie. And I think Demon Slayer just absolutely slays.
100%. The Tsuzumi drum sound is so cool. I always love like those almost like percussive sounds. I've talked about that in previous episodes, but my favorite moment is probably like a slight combination. I feel like I'm going to talk about this more in the next episode, but we're about to see, and we've seen a little bit of some really cool animation with this demon in particular and like the quality of the movement. So I'm not going to get too deep into that. I'm sure that'll be my favorite thing next episode. I think I have to call out the Tanjiro meme in this one. It's like, this is like the Tanjiro meme face that is in this, with just like looking at, maybe we can like, if we do the video, we'll flash it on the screen here or something, because it's so funny. And it's just like, it's so unexpected from him of all people, because usually I think his patience and his threshold is like very high. And he doesn't have RBF, like nothing like that. He's just done. And we haven't seen that. And this is a guy who like literally moments later is like cradling somebody in his arms that's dying and like sending them off into the afterlife with his best possible wishes. And he still doesn't have the patience for Zenitsu either. So it's just so funny. I love it.
For real, you
Yeah.
have to be pretty intense to have Tanjiro making faces like that so early after meeting you. Like, he was not impressed.
How do you think it feels to be me? Literally, when I first came to my place of employment, I definitely feel like I turned everyone's head just as Zenitsu did. And people were like, who the F is this? And then I just kept being loud and they were like, he's not half bad. All right. Well, I think that's all we got for today. So you guys know how this works, right? We definitely want to hear from you. Send us a DM on Instagram. Follow us on TikTok at Hashira Half Hour. We try and make jokes on there. Sometimes I don't always land. Don't come for me. We talk about other animes as well. We are starting to branch off into other things. So let us know what you want to see content-wise. If you want us to start covering other animes, I still haven't watched Attack on Titan, so maybe you can see that coming soon in a future arc of our own. Well, we'll see, right? But we hope that you enjoyed this week. And of course, we will definitely see you next week on the Hashira Half Hour. Umai.
Umai.
My.
Shout out for the new Umai and the new microphone.
Woo!
Woo woo!